So recently, it pretty much just hit the news that Katsunari Takayama, former WBO, IBF, and WBC minimum weight, strawweight, mini flyweight, 105-pound champion of the world, has actually officially retired. At the very least, he's officially retired from professional boxing, as it were. Interestingly enough, he actually has announced plans that he's going to basically try to qualify for the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. He's going to look to represent his country, represent Japan, in the hometown Olympics. The home country Olympics in Tokyo, Japan. It'd be really interesting. By the time those Olympics actually take place, he'll be 37 years old. So I mean, he'll definitely be well up there in age. Definitely one of the older boxing Olympians that there has been. Especially if he was to go and get a medal, he might actually be a record setter. I'd actually have to check on exactly who the oldest Olympic medalists have been, though. But I mean, he's had a fantastic professional career, and I definitely think he has potential to score himself a medal. Especially if he does compete at the weight that I imagine he'll probably be competing at, which would be the light flyweight division in the amateurs, which is basically 108 pounds and change. But just wanted to make this video, basically kind of giving a general overview of his career. What's been a fantastic pro career, and I'll definitely be trying to follow up and see how he does in the AIBA format once again. Which he hasn't fought in since the late '90s, pretty much. He turned pro in 2000, October 18th, 2000, against Yozo Nakamura. Got a 4th round TKO in a 4-round fight. Got a nice string of victories all the way up until in his 11th bout he fought Masato Takayama, and Takayama actually managed to knock Takayama out in the 9th round out of 10, and this was a fight for the Japanese light flyweight title. A lot of these early fights that he had was actually at light flyweight at 108 pounds as opposed to 105 pounds. After that, he pretty much decided to drop down to 105, where he'd pretty much make his bones for just about every other fight throughout the rest of his career. He'd occasionally have an excursion up at 108, where he would wind up weighing in officially at 106 or 107. So I'd imagine that making weight wasn't necessarily the biggest problem of his, especially being a fairly small guy, 5'2", with a 62.5-inch wingspan officially. But he was eventually able to get a shot at the WBC World Minimum Weight title against Isaac Bustos. Managed to defeat Bustos by 12-round unanimous decision in Osaka, Japan. And then in his first defense, or what would have been his first defense, he wound up fighting a little bit of a legend at the lower weights, Eagle Kiowa, a.k.a. Eagle Denjanlapan, fighter who originates from Thailand, but actually fought pretty much his entire career out of Tokyo, Japan. He was definitely a crowd favorite in Japan, one of the main fighters really to become a big draw in Japan that wasn't a Japanese fighter. Of course, there have been many before and since, like Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, Jorge Linares, Edwin Valero, Ricardo Finito Lopez managed to get some nice credibility in Japan, a lot of fanfare, for especially for foreign fighters. They definitely brought a lot to the table in the number of fights that they did have over there. But he did wind up losing to Eagle Kiowa. Was able to recover pretty nicely. Got 3 decisions in a row, 3 technical decisions, interestingly enough, before he wound up fighting against Yutaka Nida for the before Yutaka Nida, he fought Carlos Melo for the interim WBA minimum weight title. Defeated Carlos Melo. That was one of those 3 technical decisions I mentioned. 9th round technical decision, where he won pretty much every round up until that point, until that fight was stopped. Then he went on to fight Yutaka Nida for the full championship, the full WBA minimum championship, losing that fight by split decision. Yutaka Nida is an interesting case in particular as well. He was basically the top rival at 105 pounds, pretty much the top fighter at the weight class, along with Ivan Calderon around the mid-2000s, where A lot of people were clamoring for a Nida versus Calderon fight. They never wound up actually fighting each other. Calderon wound up moving up to 108 and defeating Hugo Cazares, and then having a nice little run at 108 before he was eventually sent towards retirement, losing to Giovanni Segura and Moises Fuentes. But Nida reigned for a couple years. Really solid victories for Nida until he wound up losing to Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, who, of course, I mean, his reputation nowadays goes pretty much without saying. Pound for pound fighter and all that. And after Gonzalez defeated Nida, he actually wound up fighting Takayama. Takayama was able to kind of fight his way back into the rankings, of course. Got up another string of victories. Fought Chocolatito, of course. Gonzalez did defeat him by unanimous decision. Takayama was able to win a couple of rounds off of Gonzalez, though. He definitely wasn't looking to make it easy for him. But Gonzalez, especially at that time, was just an absolute freight train. He was just an absolute animal at 105 and 108 pounds. So, pretty much goes without saying. After that, he wound up fighting an IBF minimum weight title eliminator against Shepfo Lefele of South Africa. Interestingly enough, he actually had 3 fights in a row in South Africa. The one that I just mentioned against Lefele, where he defeated Lefele by 6-round TKO. Then he had 2 fights with Nkosinathi Joyi, the IBF strawweight champion. The first fight wound up getting called a no contest after 3 rounds. I believe it was a repeated clash of heads that caused the cuts, if I'm remembering correctly. And then he fought a rematch against Joyi, where Joyi was able to defeat him cleanly by a unanimous decision. So Takayama, he definitely had a good fight, tough fight. Was fighting in South Africa. So Joyi had a little bit of an advantage there, but Joyi did legitimately win that fight. As far as I'm concerned, I think most people would agree with me as well. He did wind up going back to Asia, not to Japan, but to the Philippines, where he fought against Mateo Handig for the IBF Pan-Pacific minimum weight title, which was basically an eliminator to become the mandatory challenger for the IBF championship. Handig actually defeated him by a close split decision, where Takayama wound up getting a point deducted from pushing off of him. Handig wound up never actually fighting for that title that he had won the eliminator against, though, because he couldn't make 105 pounds anymore. So, interestingly enough, Takayama actually wound up getting the title shot instead against the then champion, the then IBF minimum weight champion, Mario Rodriguez. And he finally managed to get another title, finally managed to get that title victory that had been eluding him for a few years by that point. He managed to defeat Rodriguez by a 12-round unanimous decision. Rodriguez, interestingly enough, had won that title from Nkosinathi Joyi of South Africa, the fighter that Takayama had failed in beating against. So it set up a little bit of an interesting kind of triangle relationship between those two. Joyi defeated Takayama, Rodriguez defeated Joyi, and then Takayama defeated Rodriguez. Takayama actually did go down in that fight, though. Rodriguez dropped him in the third. Put up a good fight, solid fight, fun fight. As I probably should have mentioned earlier, Takayama, almost every one of these fights was an action fight, just a fun fight to watch, even if it was him on the losing end of it. Was able to defend that title successfully a couple of times against Virgilio Silvano, as well as against Shin Ono, both by unanimous decision as well. And then he wound up having a unification fight against Francisco Chihuas Rodriguez Jr. And really was what I consider the fight of the year of 2014. Just an absolute drag-out war between those two. Takayama went down in the third round, but he kept fighting back, and pretty much every round was just an absolute brutal bloodbath between these two fighters. And especially the 12th round, the last round of this fight, where Takayama was trying to hold on to his title, and Rodriguez was trying to snatch it away from him. They just went completely all out in, like Rocky style, just going at each other, just full force, like Barrera Morales style, just, not necessarily having all the bad blood, but just having that just sheer competitive nature between these two guys. Just putting it all on the line. Really a beautiful fight, and a fight I recommend anybody and everybody check out. Fantastic fight. Rodriguez wound up defeating Takayama to unify the titles, the IBF and the WBO. And then what would wind up happening is Rodriguez would actually vacate those titles soon after that and move up to 108 pounds, try and win the title there. Go Odaira wound up being the next opponent for Takayama, where they actually both fought for the vacant IBF and WBO titles. Takayama defeated Go Odaira in a pretty good close fight. Once again, another fight of the year-esque fight where Takayama was able to eventually stop Odaira in the 7th round by TKO. From there, he defeated Tirapong Utaida, who is, I've made a couple of videos about in the past. Hit him by 9th round technical decision to defend the IBF title. He wound up vacating the WBO title. And Utaida, I've mentioned him a couple of times before. He was the guy that Milan Milito actually defeated in order to become the mandatory for Akira Yagashi, where he knocked out Yagashi in the round last week. So Utaida is, very, very high level fighter as well. Pulled off a nice couple of upsets, including by knockout. Takayama then went on to defeat Ryuji Hara, 8th round technical knockout there. And then finally he lost his IBF title to Jose Argumedo, who currently holds the title to this day. That was in December of 2015. After the Argumedo fight, however, he wound up fighting for the vacant WBO title, which Kosei Tanaka had then vacated, moving up to 108 pounds, where of course he's a world champion at 108 now. And Takayama fought the young Riku Kano. This was in August of this past year. Fought the young Kano. Kano was only 19 years old. Was a bit of a precocious fighter, getting a title shot so young, so early in his career. His 13th fight. And it turned out to be unlucky number 13 for Kano, where Takayama managed to defeat him by a 6th round technical decision out of 12. But Takayama's had just a really fun career. The Rodriguez fight, the Odaira fight, his fight against Igo Kiowa, his fight against his initial title victory over Isaac Bustos. Really fantastic fights to watch. Just a fun, action-packed fighter, and a guy that he throws just high volume. He's just a high volume, high energy fighter. Very much in and out. Good skills as well, and he's rugged. He's a rugged guy. So I definitely think that he has a good shot when he finally fights in the Olympics. I'll be interested to see if he fights in any international competitions before the 2020 Olympics. Of course, he has to do the qualifiers and all that stuff. But I'm wondering if he may try and fight in some of the other AIBA tournaments, World Championships, or maybe even like some of the just like Pacific or Asia championships and stuff to basically kind of get back used to the shorter format. He's not fighting in 12-round championship fights anymore. He'll be fighting in 3-rounders, 3-rounders. So very fast-paced, very high-paced. But, he's a fast-paced fighter, high-paced fighter. A guy that starts quick in pretty much all the fights that he's been in. But, just wanted to make this video and give props to the man's career. He's had a fantastic pro career. And, I can't necessarily think of much of a better way to cap it off with, retiring as a champion, which he did. And then going on to possibly represent his country, represent Japan in a Japanese Olympics, and hopefully he is able to have that final ride off into the sunset in the AIBA format as well as he managed to do in the pro format. So it'll be interesting to check out, to watch, and see if he manages to pull it off. And if he does, I think that'll definitely go down in the record books in general, and really solidify his placement, I think, eventually in the Hall of Fame. I doubt he'll be a first ballot or anything, but I definitely think that just the perseverance that he's shown throughout his career, just never stopped believing that he could become a champion once again. He managed to do it several times over, got 3 of the 4 belts in the process, and just did some pretty impressive stuff in his career. Very, very good career for Katsunari Takayama. So that's pretty much all I got to say about his career, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.